There is a question most people avoid for years, not because they do not know the answer, but because they suspect the answer might require something from them. It may require a different boundary, a difficult conversation, a quiet refusal, a decision they can no longer explain away. The question is this: what would I choose if I were no longer afraid of disappointing anyone? Do not answer too quickly, because this question is not asking what you would do if nobody mattered. It is not asking you to abandon the people you love, ignore your responsibilities, or become selfish. It is asking something much more uncomfortable. How much of your life was chosen by you on? How much was chosen by your fear of other people's reactions? There may be parts of your life you genuinely love, people you would choose again, commitments that reflect your deepest values. But there may also be routines, relationships, obligations, and versions of yourself that began as temporary compromises and slowly became your entire identity. You kept saying yes because saying no created tension. You kept showing up because absence created questions. You remained available because someone needed you. You stayed quiet because honesty might change the atmosphere. And eventually, you became so skilled at preventing other people's disappointment that you stopped noticing your own. By the end of this video, you will understand why this happens, why it can become stronger as the years pass, and how one question can begin returning your decisions to you, not all at once, not through rebellion, but through a gradual return to the part of you that has been waiting to be consulted. Most people do not lose themselves in one dramatic moment. They lose themselves through thousands of reasonable decisions. You answer the phone even though you are exhausted. You attend a gathering because declining would seem rude. You agree to help because you are known as the dependable one. You remain in a role because other people feel safer when you stay the same. You choose what is practical, acceptable, expected, or least likely to create conflict. None of these decisions looks dangerous by itself. In fact, many of them look generous. But when nearly every choice is organized around preserving someone else's comfort, a quiet split begins to develop. On the outside, your life appears stable. On the inside, you may feel strangely absent from it. You may wake up with responsibilities, but no anticipation. You may have people around you, but feel unseen. You may complete everything expected of you and still wonder why. Satisfaction never arrives. Sometimes this appears as exhaustion. Sometimes it appears as irritability over small requests. Sometimes it appears as envy when you see someone making a choice you secretly wish you could make. You may tell yourself that you are tired, ungrateful, difficult, or simply getting older. But the deeper issue may not be that you hate your life. It may be that you have not been asked what you want from it in a very long time. There is a difference between a life that contains responsibility and a life that has been completely surrendered to it. There is a difference between loving people and organizing your identity around never upsetting them. There is a difference between compromise and disappearance. That difference is difficult to recognize. When you have spent years being rewarded for your usefulness, maybe you were praised for being mature. Maybe you were the child who did not cause trouble, the one who understood the pressure your parents were under, the one who helped, adapted, waited, and needed less. Perhaps later you became the reliable employee, the patient partner, the sibling who solved problems, the parent who held everyone together, or the friend who always answered. These roles may have brought real meaning, but they may also have taught you a dangerous equation. To be loved, remain useful. To belong, remain agreeable. To be safe, avoid disappointing anyone. Once that equation becomes part of your identity, even a small personal choice can feel threatening. You do not simply decide whether to rest on Saturday. You imagine who will feel neglected. You do not simply consider changing direction. You imagine who will question your judgment. You do not simply say, I cannot do that. You feel as though you are violating an invisible contract. This is why a person can know exactly what they need and still feel unable to choose it. The obstacle is not always confusion. Sometimes the obstacle is anticipated. Disappointment. Psychologists who study motivation often distinguish between actions that feel internally chosen and actions driven mainly by pressure, fear, guilt, or the need for approval. Autonomy does not mean living without relationships. It means experiencing your behavior as something you can genuinely endorse as an expression of values you recognize as your own. You may still choose sacrifice. You may still care for someone. You may still honor a responsibility that is difficult, but the inner experience is different when the choice belongs to you. A chosen sacrifice may be tiring, but it can still carry meaning. A sacrifice made through chronic fear often produces resentment, numbness, or the feeling that your life is being spent without your permission. This does not mean every uncomfortable obligation is wrong. It means discomfort alone cannot tell you whether a choice is yours. Sometimes doing what matters is difficult. Sometimes setting a boundary is also difficult. The question is not which choice feels easiest. The question is, which choice reflects the person I am trying to become? Imagine a woman named Marianne. She is 58 years old. People describe her as kind, organized, calm, and reliable. She is the person relatives call when someone needs a ride, help with paperwork, advice about a conflict, or a place to stay out of work. She is the employee who remembers what everyone else forgets out at home. She anticipates needs before anyone expresses them. For years, Marianne has carried this role with pride, and some of that pride is deserved. She has helped people through real difficulties. She has created stability where there might otherwise have been chaos. But recently, she has begun to experience a kind of fatigue that sleep does not fix. On Sunday afternoons, when the week ahead is still quiet, she sometimes sits at her kitchen table and feels an emotion she cannot easily name. Nothing terrible has happened, no. Crisis is occurring, yet she feels as though she is standing outside her own life, looking through a window. A few months earlier, Marianne noticed an evening course at a community art studio. She used to draw when she was young, not professionally, not brilliantly, but she remembers how completely time disappeared. When she was doing it, the class meets every Wednesday for 8 weeks. She opens the registration page several times. Each time, she closes it. Wednesday is the evening her adult daughter sometimes calls for help with the grandchildren that her sister occasionally visits on. Wednesdays, her husband has become accustomed to her preparing dinner at a certain time. Nobody has explicitly forbidden Marianne from taking a class. That is what makes the situation difficult to explain. There is no villain, only a network of expectations, habits, and imagined reactions, she tells herself. The course is not important. She can draw at home. She is too old to begin again. The family needs her. Perhaps she will take the next one. But beneath all these explanations is a quieter sentence. Someone may be disappointed if I choose this. One Sunday, Marianne writes the question on a piece of paper. What would I choose if I were no longer afraid of disappointing anyone? Her first reaction is resistance. The question sounds selfish. Then she notices something. She is not asking what she would choose if she stopped loving her family. She is not asking what she would choose if responsibilities disappeared. She is asking what fear has been preventing her from considering honestly. The answer is immediate. She would take the class. Then another answer appears. She would stop answering every phone call at the moment it arrives. Then another. She would ask her husband to prepare dinner one evening a week. Then another. She would visit her sister because she wanted connection, not because guilt had placed the visit on the schedule. Marianne does not transform. her life overnight. She does not make a dramatic speech. She does not accuse anyone of taking advantage of her. She registers for the class. Then she tells her family what she has decided. Her daughter is surprised. Her husband asks what they will do about dinner. Her sister jokes that Marianne is becoming unavailable. These reactions are uncomfortable, but none of them is catastrophic. The first Wednesday, Marianne feels guilty while driving to the studio. The guilt is real, but guilt is not always proof that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes, guilt appears because you are doing something unfamiliar. Sometimes it is the emotional alarm created when an old role begins to change. For decades, Marianne's nervous system associated other people's satisfaction with safety. Choosing herself did not immediately feel liberating at first. It felt dangerous. That is an important part of this process. People often imagine that an authentic decision will feel clear, confident, and peaceful from the beginning. Sometimes it does. But when you have been organized around approval, a genuine choice may initially feel like selfishness. A healthy boundary may feel like rejection. Rest may feel like irresponsibility. Privacy may feel like secrecy. Change may feel like betrayal. The emotional discomfort does not automatically mean the decision is wrong. It may mean you are stepping outside a pattern that once protected your belonging. This is where the central question becomes useful. It creates a small distance between what you want and what you fear. Instead of immediately obeying the anticipated reaction, you examine it. What would I choose if I were not afraid of disappointing anyone? Then comes the second part. Would that choice reflect my values or merely provide temporary escape? This matters because personal freedom is not the same as acting on every impulse. You may want to avoid a difficult conversation, but avoidance may not reflect your values. You may want to cancel an important responsibility, but keeping it may be part of the person you genuinely choose to be. You may want distance from someone because you need perspective or because you are afraid of being vulnerable. The question does not make the decision for you. It reveals the pressure that has been making the decision on your behalf. Once the pressure is visible, you can choose with greater honesty. Consider the difference between these two sentences. I am helping because I cannot tolerate their disappointment. And I am helping because, after considering the cost, this is still what I want to stand for. The external action may look identical, but internally, one is controlled by fear, the other is connected to meaning. A, life begins to feel like yours again, not when you stop caring about people, but when care becomes a choice rather than a compulsory. Identity. There is another reason this question can be powerful later in life. As the years pass, many of the roles that once defined you begin to shift. Children become adults. Careers change or end. Parents age or die. Relationships evolve. The body changes. Time becomes more visible. You may suddenly realize that the identity you've built around being needed cannot answer a more personal question. Who am I when nobody is asking anything from me? For some people, this question creates relief. For others, it creates fear, because being needed may have protected you from confronting your own unlived desires. When you are always responding, you do not have to decide when your schedule belongs. To everyone else, you do not have to discover what you would do with freedom. When your role is clear, your identity does not need to be examined. This is why some people become restless when life grows quieter. They say they want peace, but when peace arrives, they fill it immediately. They volunteer for another obligation. They enter another relationship. They create another crisis to solve. They remain busy enough to avoid meeting the self that exists beneath usefulness. The problem is not generosity. The problem is using generosity to avoid your own life. A psychologically meaningful life contains connection and autonomy. It contains responsibility and choice. It allows you to care for others without requiring you to disappear. Research on narrative. Identity suggests that people do not experience identity as a list of facts. We experience it as an evolving story. We decide what past events mean. We decide which roles define us. We decide whether a painful chapter proves we are powerless or reveals something about our endurance. But sometimes the story becomes too narrow. I am the responsible one. I am the one who keeps the peace. I am the one who does not need much. I am the one who stays. I am the one who never disappoints anyone. These identities may contain truth, but they may not contain the whole truth. The danger begins when a role becomes a prison because you mistake consistency for integrity. Integrity does not require remaining the same forever. Sometimes integrity requires updating your life when your understanding changes. You are allowed to discover that the person you became to survive is not the only person you are capable of being. You are allowed to revise the story. You are allowed to say, that role protected me once, but it now costs too much. That relationship mattered, but its current form no longer works. That dream belonged to an earlier version of me. That obligation was accepted without enough thought. That silence kept the peace, but it did not create closeness. This is not failure. It is psychological authorship. The ability to participate in the writing of your own life. But authorship is difficult when every sentence must first be approved by an audience. Perhaps you have been waiting for permission from people who benefit from your hesitation. Perhaps you have been waiting for them to understand before you make a change. Perhaps you believe a boundary becomes legitimate only when everyone agrees that it is reasonable. But boundaries often become necessary, precisely because agreement is unavailable. If nobody objected to your limit, you might not need the limit. This does not mean you should become harsh. It means disappointment can be survivable. Someone may dislike your decision without your decision. Being cruel, someone may misunderstand you without you being wrong. Someone may prefer the older version of you because that version required less adjustment from them. Their discomfort deserves consideration. It does not automatically deserve control. There is a deeper inversion here. You may believe that disappointing others threatens your relationships, but constantly abandoning yourself also changes relationships. It creates hidden resentment. It makes affection feel like obligation. It teaches people that your availability has no limit. It prevents them from knowing your real preferences. It may even deprive them of the opportunity to become more capable because you keep solving what they could learn to handle. When you never risk disappointment, people may remain close to your service while staying distant from your actual self. They know what you provide. They may not know who you are. That is one reason a life can look full and still feel strangely impersonal. The schedule is full. The phone is full. The house is full. The calendar is full. But your own voice appears only in the empty spaces. You may notice it late at night, while driving alone, in the few minutes before someone enters the room. It may say, I do not want to keep doing this. I miss something I cannot name. I need more quiet. I want to begin again. I am tired of explaining. I want to know what I would choose. Do not dismiss that voice merely because it is inconvenient, but do not obey it. Blindly aid it. Listen to it with seriousness. A useful way to do this is to practice the question in small decisions before using it in major ones. When a request arrives, pause. Do not answer immediately unless the situation is truly urgent. Notice the first reaction in your body and mind, then ask, what would I choose if I were no longer afraid of disappointing anyone? Write down the answer without editing it. This answer is not yet a command, it is information. Next, ask, what am I afraid will happen if I choose this? Be specific. Not people will be upset. Who will be upset? What might they say? What are you imagining their disappointment means about you? That you are selfish, unreliable, cold, ungrateful, difficult? Then ask, is that judgment accurate or is it an old fear? Now examine the choice through your values. Does the choice reflect honesty, care, self-respect, responsibility, growth, peace, courage? There will be times when your first desire conflicts with a deeper value. You may not want to visit a sick relative, but love may lead you to go. You may not want to have a difficult conversation, but integrity may lead you to speak. You may want to leave a responsibility immediately, but wisdom may lead you to create a gradual plan. The goal is not to choose comfort every time. The goal is to stop allowing anticipated disappointment to make every decision before your values are consulted. After that, choose the smallest, honest action available. Not the most dramatic, the smallest honest action. It might be saying, I need to check my schedule before I answer. It might be allowing a phone call to go to voicemail. It might be asking someone else to participate. Instead of carrying everything yourself, it might be protecting one evening a week. It might be admitting that you have changed your mind. It might be returning to an interest you abandoned years ago. It might be saying, I care about you, but I cannot do that. Small choices matter because identity is reinforced through repetition. Every time you consult yourself before responding, you weaken the belief that everyone else must vote before you do. Every time you tolerate someone's mild disappointment without rushing to repair it, you learn that connection can survive honesty. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your own voice becomes more credible. This is how a life begins to feel personal again. Not because every circumstance changes, but because you are present in your own decisions. There is also a language technique that may help when emotion becomes overwhelming. Instead of asking only, what should I do? Try speaking to yourself as you would speak to someone you care about. Use your own name. Ask, what does Maria need to consider here? What is David afraid will happen? What choice would respect both Elena and the people she loves? Creating a little psychological distance can reduce the intensity of the immediate emotional reaction and make reflection easier. The purpose is not to detach from your feelings. It is to see them clearly enough that they do not become your only source of direction. And when self-criticism appears, do not answer it with empty praise. Answer it with accuracy. Instead of, I am a terrible person for saying no. Try, I feel guilty because I am changing a familiar pattern. Instead of, I am letting everyone down. Try, one person is disappointed by one decision. Instead of, I should be able to do everything.
Try,
I have limits, and pretending otherwise eventually harms everyone. Accurate self-talk is more sustainable than exaggerated positivity. You do not have to convince yourself that every choice is perfect. You need to remember that your needs are part of the reality being considered. For some viewers, this question may reveal a small adjustment. For others, it may reveal a painful truth about a relationship, career, or identity. Do not feel pressured to act impulsively. Clarity can arrive before readiness. You may know something for a while before you know how to change it safely. You can gather information, seek professional support, make a financial plan, practice a boundary, talk with someone trustworthy. The purpose of this question is not to rush you into a new life. It is to stop excluding you from the life you already have. Remember Marianne? The art class did not solve every problem. Her family did not instantly understand. She still helped people. She still prepared dinner on other evenings. She was still kind, but something important changed. On Wednesdays, she entered a room where nobody needed her to solve anything. She sat before a blank page at first. She felt awkward, then curious, then absorbed. Week by week, she began to remember that she was not only a function in other people's lives, she was a person with attention, imagination, preference, and unfinished possibility. That recognition changed more than Wednesday evenings. She began pausing before a green dot. She began making requests instead of silently hoping people would notice her exhaustion. She became less resentful because her yes became more honest. And when she said no, she stopped writing a courtroom defense for every decision. Her life did not become selfish, it became inhabited. That may be the transformation you are looking for. Not a life without obligation, a life in which your participation is real, not a life where nobody is disappointed. A life where disappointment is no longer the final authority. Not a life designed only around desire. A life where your values, limits, relationships, and inner voice are all allowed into the room. So ask yourself the question again, slowly. What would I choose if I were no longer afraid of disappointing anyone? Notice the first answer. Notice the fear that follows it. Notice whether the answer represents escape, impulse, or something deeper. Then ask what one small, honest action would allow your life to include more of you. You do not need to explain everything today. You do not need to change everything tomorrow. But you may need to stop pretending that your absence from your own decisions is the same as love. The people who genuinely care for you may need time to adjust to your honesty. Some will understand, some will resist. Some relationships may become stronger because there is finally a real person inside them, and some may reveal that they depended more on your compliance than your presence. Whatever happens, you will begin to learn something essential. You can care without surrendering authorship. You can belong without disappearing. You can disappoint someone and remain a good person. You can change and still honor what came before. And you can begin again without rejecting the entire life you have already lived. Sometimes the first step back to yourself is not a dramatic decision. It is a question asked in a quiet room, a question nobody else can answer. A question that returns your voice to the conversation. If this question opens something in you, write mine in the comments. And remember, your life does not become yours because nobody needs you. It becomes yours when your own truth is finally allowed to matter too.